Welcome to r/Tales from Tech Support, where we get to have a little chuckle at the technologically disadvantaged, like me. I'm Uncle Reddit, and have I got a story for you. Hey guys, welcome back. Sorry I skipped Friday. We took a couple days and went camping, and I thought about trying to record, but the Wi-Fi was just horrible, and yeah, who needs that? I cannot access my computer, also known as how a power failure confused a user with poor power off habits. Been a while since my last post here. Been a while since my last job in IT. But I come with a short one because sometimes I can't believe how incompetent some people can be when it comes to basic computer usage in 2021. In this story that takes place during one of the many lockdowns we've experienced over these past 2 years, I was working from home as an IT engineer for an undisclosed MSP. The customers I'd work with are staff members responsible for either teaching English as a second language students, college students, or recruitment partners for job hunting services. Our systems are pretty heavily into the whole Microsoft everything as a service, single sign-on ecosystem, Office 365, MS Teams, etc. Even logging into the Wi-Fi in Office relies on our current login details in AD. During lockdown, we had to overhaul our IT security so that certain systems couldn't be accessed without a company VPN, which changed configurations like 3 times, and didn't support some protocol that Windows insisted on enabling for the VPN profile. This is very relevant, I assure you. One day, while I'm seeing to my current project of ensuring all devices in our network are running the latest version of Windows, I get an urgent support request from a user. Let's call this person Diana. Diana tells me she cannot access the computer and that she needs access immediately. Now, many of you might be thinking expired password. I was at first too. Our password policy is that passwords invalidate after 6 months, but you can still log into the computer if you aren't connected to the domain. I reset her password and get her to try and log in, but she just says she can't access her computer. I ask her to tell me if there are any errors when she tries to log in. Same response. I ask her for her asset tag, so I can remote in. She gives me this, but our remote management software doesn't see her devices online. I tried asking her to turn it off and on again, and I actually get a new response this time. She tells me that the computer is sleeping. The way she said it, it felt weirdly phrased. After pressing some more, I discovered that the monitor was actually going into sleep mode, and she was just turning the monitor on and off when she was and wasn't using it. To save you the blow-by-blow, I then spent about 15 minutes getting her to understand that her PC wasn't the monitor, but the thing that the monitor was plugged into, in this case her work laptop. She couldn't understand why it didn't just work because that's how it had worked for so long until now. It turned out her house had experienced a power failure overnight, which lasted several hours. All our devices after being imaged are configured to never switch off while on charge, but they do go into hibernate if they're left on for over 2 hours on battery. When her power restored, the machine had already switched off and had to be manually switched on, but she had never done this in the lifespan of her using the device. She just thought the monitor she had attached to it was all she needed to do. So after that little lesson, I took the opportunity to make sure she could log in, that everything was working, and called it a day. 40-minute call just to get her to press the right power button. I'm still amazed and blown away at how many people think turning the monitor off and on is turning your computer off and on. It was sleeping. All these POS terminals keep shutting down. Oh, that could be taken in a couple different ways. Years ago, I was the top contact for point-of-sale support for a high-end hotel chain in the US. One day I got a call from our San Diego location. They were setting up 6 bar terminals for a Comic-Con event that evening, and all of them kept randomly shutting down and restarting. I was a bit mystified because it was happening randomly to each terminal, as opposed to all at once. At one point, their on-site tech mentioned that it was kind of hard to read the screen, but I didn't think much of it. Everything looked fine from a network perspective until the machines would indeed randomly restart after 10 to 15 minutes. Very unusual behavior, and it wasn't affecting any of the 20-ish other identical terminals at the hotel. After speaking with the on-site tech for about 45 minutes, he revealed some key information while making chit-chat. Man, it's so hot out here. Wait, are you outside? Yeah, I think they said it was the hottest it's ever been this time of year. Okay. And these terminals are all outside? Yep. Are they in direct sunlight? Uh-huh. On the hottest day on record, I think I figured out what's going on. Set up some umbrellas over the terminals and let's hope there's no permanent damage. Just can't imagine. I've had phones that would do that outside working construction that would just overheat and restart, crash. Sometimes I would even get an overheating warning. Mostly on laptops and tablets, not so much on the phones, but yeah, sometimes you just got to think your way through it a little bit. I've also seen people use their phones and tablets outside in direct sunlight at the beach, and they can't figure out why about after an hour or so, their screen goes completely black. I don't know if it happens on the newer phones, but I know a couple years ago I've seen a couple iPhones and a couple Androids do that. It's almost like it looks like when the old crystal readout on an old calculator goes totally black across it. Most of them did seem to come back after putting them in the shade and turning them off for a while, but yeah, evidently the sun bakes those screens pretty good. The Google box. Anytime someone comes up with a theory about how the government is tracking us all with COVID vaccines or conspiring with Big Corp to stockpile their favorite cereal and drive up the prices, I know they've never worked in the public sector. If you have, you know that they would be incapable of thinking of it, ill-equipped to execute it, and physically indisposed to avoid bragging about it if they pulled off something so cool. Here's how the employment turnover works. You have a team with a certain number of roles. Anytime there's a vacancy, the new person comes in full of ideas and ways to improve the ridiculous systems. So they try. They bang their head against all the walls, the floor, and ceiling. They do way more work than everyone else in the team. Eventually they say, F this, and quit. This process repeats ad infinitum until, through the probability of deviation, a slacker gets the rotating vacancy. That slacker looks around and sees a world where they can get away with doing no work. That seat is now filled forever. And it stays like this until someone retires, dies, immigrates, or is hit by a meteorite. This was my experience. Sat in the office, about halfway to quitting, when the IT director sticks his head around the door and announces proudly to the team, "I've bought us a Google box." This is quite surprising that some equipment has been bought without any involvement of the people who look after the network and servers. Like I said, I was only halfway to quitting, and I'd still be surprised by things like this. I was also surprised that I'd have to fight and argue about having an extra redundant hard drive in a server that had no backup server. It wasn't that I wanted more money, but the space would be the total of 2 hard drives, and not 3 like the boss wanted. They were so tight with money that everything was a fight, yet now we have a Google box. What's that do then? I ask. Well, the boss starts, you plug it into your network and it indexes all the files in your network, much like Google does. And then you configure an address and you can search your own network, and you don't even have to manage it. A large part of IT design is looking for the problems. It annoys a lot of people because you piss in their bonfire and their bonfire is next to a box of fireworks. It's worth pissing on though. Not that a bonfire isn't great, but it needs some work. I start thinking about the Google box for about 3 seconds. I literally think it took me this long to come up with the question, and in all the time of looking at it online and going through the purchasing stage, not once did my boss think, "So how do you stop it indexing something?" "Why would you need to?" he dumbly asks with his dumb face. "Well, we don't want HR and finance records available and searchable for all to see, even a preview or a cached version. How do you prevent that?" 3 things happened after I asked that question. 1, the boss said, "Huh, I'll have to look into that." 2, the boss left our office far less proudly than he entered. 3, the Google box sat on top of one of the server racks unused until the day I left. Return it and get our money back? Nah, why would we do that? Like OP said, almost no government agency is capable of pulling off something really cool like that. And even if somebody in there is smart enough and has enough power to make that call, the budgets are always so tight that it'll never happen. Or you got to go through 8 miles of red tape and a stack of paperwork that would make Mount Everest look like a molehill. You can lead a man to knowledge, but beating him incessantly over the head with it won't make him learn. It's a time of year where my department starts conducting training for our company dealerships located all over the US and a few placed overseas. Last year, the pandemic forced us to do it all totally online. This actually worked great for a few products, and those are now only going to be taught online going forward. I got assigned one of these to teach this year and decided I should watch the recording from last year. This will let me figure out the format it used along with any updates or changes where I could make it better. This training talked about a topic for 5 to 7 minutes. I asked some review questions the students answered in the Zoom chat. then allowed students to ask questions before moving on to topic 2, where the format repeated. Topic 1 was all about compatibility. It clearly and repeatedly states that a controller A only works with option A and the newer controller B only works with option B. They look the same, but mix and match stuff isn't going to fly. Then it moved on to the review questions, where question 1 was if controller A would function with option B. Everyone typed no in the comments like, good little student, and on to the next question. When it was time for the students to ask questions, the first one to appear in the chat window was, all my option A's are on the back order. Can I use option B's to finish the installations instead? You could almost see the presenter die inside because that is literally all he'd just been talking about. Oh my god. I love it when things go around in circles like that. Just dumb. Your boss said you can get my data back. First post here, so a little introduction. I work in a computer store in Belgium for almost 14 years now. This week a customer came into the shop and threw a plastic bag with 3 discs in it on the counter. I came up to him and he started to ask if we could help him with getting the data off the discs. They were a little smaller than a CD, DVD. Before I could answer him, he continued telling that my boss told him that we can get the data off of it. Before I could ask anything, he continued that the discs were discs out of a hard drive. I told him that it was not possible and that the discs are now broken and that he lost his data. The person started getting annoyed and started telling me that he came to my boss and asked if he could get the data out of external hard disk drives that couldn't be read. My boss explained to him that we can try it, that we take out the hard disk drive out of the enclosure and try it like that, but that wasn't guaranteed. So he went back home and took out the hard drive out of the enclosure by himself, but also opening the hard drive to get the disks out. Oh my god, he took the platters out of the disk drives. Oh my god. Oh. He started to get a little bit mad and start complaining that my boss doesn't know what he was talking about and gave him faulty information. I tried to explain to him again that it was only taking out the hard disk drive of the enclosure. Then the customer left being mad that he lost his data and lost 80 pounds for a hard drive, or euros or something. Some people will never learn to keep their hands out of things where they don't know a thing about it. Oh my god, I've never seen anybody actually take a hard drive apart and take the platters out when they actually want to keep the data. I mean, I've taken them apart before, but knowing that nothing on there was anything that I wanted to keep. It was just for curiosity's sake. This guy's nuts. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor if you haven't already. Click like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe click that little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya!